Okay, so I suppose we'll start with the big question, which may or may not be easy to answer, is what is it reasonable to expect, or what can we expect the industry to achieve when it comes to sustainability and achieving net zero? I mean, is it a realistic target, or even if they get close to it, is that, well done? Just your thoughts on that.
It's going to be hard. Like most industries, we have really ambitious goals, and truly reaching net zero is complex, but I think we can make significant progress towards it. Dell has a net zero goal of 2050, but then there's these goals along the way in 2030 and 2040 that are stepping stones that are meant to help us get there. So I think that's the way you check progress against this, big goal. And that's how we define what is actually achievable. And it's going to involve a lot of partnering closely with our suppliers and customers. And that means that we can only influence and not control every single thing. That means you can't promise the world. But there are some measurable steps along the way, and IT, data centers, operations, regulatory people, they're all going to have to align on metrics and KPIs that connect all those different types of organizations. And that's what will help us get there.
I'm also wondering as well, in the same way that at the moment you can offset your carbon footprint, I guess planting trees was the standard way, but there are other ways people do it. I'm wondering, should the industry be able to offset all the good that it's doing digitally? So, whether it's the IT folks or the data centers, yes, they're power hungry and their carbon footprint is not insignificant. But as we're doing now, talking over video, if we had to meet up, hop on planes or whatever it is, that's a significant. So should it be given credit somewhere in this equation as to all the good things it's doing, all the carbon it is saving at the same time as it's consuming, if that makes sense?
Yes, in fact, we talk about that a lot, about like the footprint versus the handprint. So the footprint is the energy consumed to do calculations, and then the handprint is the impact those types of calculations could have on society. For example, we have several customers at Dell that have data centers, and they even have a really green data center in Iceland. So there absolutely are examples of AI in these data centers having a positive environmental impact in the work that they're doing. But to get to your original question, no, current emissions reporting doesn't factor that in. But we can still talk about it, and as things get better, one day we'll be able to measure the impact versus the cost.
Yeah, and you mentioned there a little bit about, touched on the energy situation, and I guess the biggest thing to address is the energy transition. I mean, clearly renewables are already out there, but there's a way to go. I'm just wondering if you got any thoughts as to where we are in terms of the whole renewables or alternative energy sources, and where you think the industry can get to, or where it needs to be.
That's a good question. Okay, so according to the IEA, the International Energy Agency, over time for data centers, emissions have only grown slightly, which is actually very impressive, because the amount of calculation and compute done has grown a lot. So that's good. However, to get on track to net zero, we all collectively as data centers are going to have to reduce emissions by about 50%. And that's a huge shift. Around 20 to 30% globally, data centers are powered by renewable energy, which is fantastic. That varies regionally. So Europe is generally leading in most cases. Some countries are even as high as 50% renewable energy. And so we need to take those learnings and expand them. And that's where we need to head.
Okay, and I'm wondering also as well, there's a growing trend, I think it's fair to say, in terms of people looking at data center locations. So I always use the example of the Nordics, for example, where there's more and more data center capacity being built there. And clearly the climate is conducive to lots and lots of free cooling, or at least more than in other parts of the world. They have plentiful renewables as well, I think. So I'm just wondering, as a trend or as an active policy, those people that, latency sensitive traders and stuff like that, I guess the data centers will always have to be close to, where the action is taking place. But for a lot of people, that's not the case. So I'm just wondering, do you think we might see a growing trend for data centers to sort of head further north and even sort of further south to more temperate climates, if that, yeah, any thoughts?
I think that's a good point, and it's true, but I don't think it will be all data centers. Certainly, the most energy intensive ones will move to those colder climates, as you said. Over the next 2 years, AI is kind of a slow and gradual adjustment, and I think it'll go cloud first, and then they'll decide on-prem or colo, and that will have an impact in the location discussion that you were talking about. In addition to just the temperature, there's other things to think about, that especially where the hyperscalers are going, we have to consider the availability of fiber and power being critical. In fact, the power capacity is limited in really high density areas like Dublin or Netherlands, Singapore, Northern Virginia. And so access to renewable power is really a growing factor in selection for data center sites. And so the cold climates that you mentioned definitely factor into that potential to reuse waste heat, or reduce energy for cooling, but it won't be the only consideration. I think it'll be a combination of factors.
Okay, yeah, and you mentioned the word that everyone's talking about at the moment, AI, and the impact of that. I mean, most conversations people are talking about the data center industry, without really the AI coming online, and I guess nobody quite knows the impact, but I think everyone agrees it's going to be fairly significant. So I suppose the data center industry's already got its path to net zero. Is that factoring in this huge AI explosion, or will they have to, in 2 years' time, recalculate everything because all these new power-hungry data centers that no one had really, allowed for? Just your thoughts as to the likely impact of AI, and are people, ready for it, or it's going to throw out this net zero roadmap?
Oh my gosh, both. So before the AI boom, we set our goals years ago, in 2019, 2020, and we had this whole plan, and then now things have changed. So yes, we have to recalculate it, but not in 2 years' time. We're already working on that. So when you think about a server and the environmental impact of it, there's really 4 areas that we think about for product carbon footprint. There's manufacturing and transportation and end of life. And those 3 of the 4 categories, manufacturing, transportation, and end of life, are all the same, whether it's used for AI or any other purpose. So the only difference that AI is bringing is that use phase. That's the 4th category when you consider a product's carbon footprint. And that's where it's much larger. And if you can use renewable energy on those really energy intensive products, you're minimizing the environmental impact. Or to put it another way, if you have an AI server or an AI data center in one location or country that has a lot of coal power plants supplying the energy to that data center, that exact same data center with the same compute, the same processors in it, everything, but is powered by nuclear or solar energy, the environmental impacts are totally different. So we have to focus on those renewables, and we can't do everything everywhere all at once, but we can focus it on those energy intensive products and workloads, and that's where we're going to be able to make progress. That'll have the biggest impact.
Okay, and I think at the start of the conversation, I think you mentioned about collaboration being quite important. I'm just wondering the ways in which IT manufacturers and the data center owners, operators, are already working together, but also how much more scope is there? And here I'm maybe thinking about liquid cooling, where if we're going clearly there's immersion cooling and then there's direct to chip. So the server manufacturers are getting involved with that. But yeah, just your thoughts as to that landscape of collaboration, what's happening now, and the potential to increase that.
Oh, for sure. Collaboration is having to happen across the entire industry and through regulators and partnerships. That's no matter what you're talking about, whether it's environmental or not, those partnerships are really the key to driving meaningful and lasting change across an industry. Third parties help a lot. It makes it easier for customers to make decisions. And eco labels. For example, there's an eco label called EPEAT, EPEAT. It's like Energy Star rating that you might have on a dishwasher or refrigerator in your house. And it takes into consideration energy, just like Energy Star, and other environmental factors like recycled materials and water and land use. And they give ratings of bronze, silver, or gold. So that collaboration together to standardize is really helping drive change. And Dell is currently the only server vendor to get EPEAT Silver in the industry and Climate Plus early designations. We really believe that you can't let companies just tell you themselves that they're sustainable. There has to be a third party validating that statement. And so that's where the collaboration and partnerships really matter. I wanted to touch on another thing you brought up about liquid cooling, because that definitely helps reduce the energy use. But not every data center is ready for liquid cooling right away. Sometimes there can be organizational changes needed. It involves another new collaboration that you just mean between data center facilities and the IT teams. And they're going to have to partner from the whole life cycle of the data center, from operating it to designing it. And so customers are at kind of a big spectrum. There's air cooling, which has its own purposes, direct to chip, liquid cooling, and immersion cooling. And so it's really just about solving for the right thing while taking in customer constraints. So what we had to do at Dell was look at our full portfolio and make sure we have air cooling, because that's where most people are right now. We also have some products that are liquid assisted air cooled. So it still has those tubes with the liquid cooling, kind of like a radiator in your car, but they're not plumbed through the facility. They're standalone. And so we call it air assisted liquid cooling. We have products in that spectrum. We have liquid cooling products, and through OEM, we've even done immersion cooling. So I'm going to say that there's not really one solution here, but a really broad range. And it's about having the knowledge and experience to have the right cooling solution for the right compute workload.
Okay, so Dell, I mean, you've got a huge, broad technology portfolio, and that presumably means you're well positioned to help the data centers in terms of their sustainability. But I'm just wondering sort of how much of a responsibility you think you have and how proactive you are in going to the data centers and saying, we can help you with these problems, or do you more often wait for them to come to you and say, we've got this problem, can you help? But yeah, just your thoughts as to the responsibility Dell has and how you step up to the plate in terms of working with all these different organizations, the collaboration you described earlier, I guess.
Yes, proactive all the way. We do have some customers that are even far ahead of that, and they're coming to us. In fact, I'm talking to you right now from a customer advisory board session where we all get together and talk about the types of problems that they're facing to make sure that we can solve those proactively. And we have lots of ways that we can reach out to customers in advance. There's something called a Get Efficient assessment that anyone can ask a Dell salesperson for. And it'll provide kind of a holistic approach to energy use and carbon emissions. They'll look at where you are now and what a data refresh may look or a product refresh may look like for you. And so that's one really important proactive way that we're talking to our customers.
Okay, and I started with a fairly big question as to what was possible when it comes to sustainability and net zero for the data industry. And finished with perhaps a similar one, slightly different. But in terms of that future, I mean, there's a whole spectrum. Some people are fairly, shall we say, cynical and just don't think it's possible. The industry isn't going to get there, and others are optimistic that given the time frame and the technology developments going on, it is. So I'm just wondering, are you more of an optimist and you think, yeah, we're heading in the right direction at the right speed, or do you occasionally sort of sit there and think, whoops a daisy, where we're not making enough progress fast enough, and somewhere on the way there's going to be a bit of a bottleneck, or something's going to go horribly wrong? Just where are you on that spectrum?
Oh, I am both of those people, depending on the day.
Right.
No, but really, most of the time, I am very optimistic. Especially sustainability is really seen, viewed more and more as a valued feature, not just something that we have to do because of regulations. And that's helping us make accelerated movement towards net zero goals. And then that starts to happen, and then that drives more optimism. And as much as I would love to make everything sunshine and rainbows, this coming year is going to be tough. There's customers are facing CSRD regulation, corporate sustainability reporting directive that you may be familiar with. It's happening in Europe, but it's impacting the full world. We've got rising energy costs. So those are going to be tough, but those absolutely will drive change. And the other thing that makes me really, really optimistic is that the types of things that we want to do in data centers to make them more sustainable, like make them energy efficient and reduce total energy use, are the types of things that businesses need to do anyway. They're either limited by the amount of power that they have, and so they're trying to get more compute for that same amount of power, or they're trying to reduce their energy bills. And so when you see a scenario where what's better for the business and what's better for the planet coincide, that's where you're going to see progress. So I'm going to change my answer, and now I'm going to say I'm really optimistic. Came around.
And if I could just perhaps ask one final bit of a supplementary to that. I mean, the political world is quite volatile, shall we say, in various places, not just in, one specific country. And some of that is around net, there's quite sort of, shall we say, robust debate around net zero. There's a bit of an anti-lobby in various countries. And are you at all worried that will be seen as giving a green light to whether it's the data center industry or whatever, that we can go slower because actually, our governments or, there's a serious factions suggesting that it's not actually necessary, or it's it's going to be anti-competitive. Just your thoughts, I suppose, as to whether the political world will muddy the sustainability journey.
The sustainability journey, as much as I would like it, was never going to be straight up a hill. There's going to be setbacks, political and otherwise, and they're heartbreaking when they happen. But forward progress will continue simply because what I'm just saying, it makes more business and financial sense. And I believe in that more than anything else. So no matter comes into power in various over time, the dollars matter in the end, whether you're talking about the dollars to power a data center or the dollars that need to be invested in sustainable things to prevent other costs for your country or your company. Financially, it'll make sense. So I have full faith that we'll get there one way or another.
Okay, it's been great to chat and some lovely insights into what's going on in the data center world and how Dell is engaging. So, Alyson, really appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.